what's up, everybody? This is Ben coming to you live from day 3 at the Big Up Festival in Ghent, New York. Sitting down with Michael Travis and Jason Hann, who are about to headline the main stage as EOTO. How you guys doing today?
Very well.
Good, glad to hear. So to start off, obviously you guys have been tearing through the ranks of the industry, having now reached headliner status. How has your show developed musically since the last couple of years?
Okay, pause.
I'll take this one.
Okay.
Well, I feel like if we both had this vision of what it was supposed to end up looking like, as far as flow and fluidity. Can you put those words together? No.
You can do whatever you want.
Fluidity. But just getting on top of the technology took a while. So I think over the last couple of years, we've really gotten so that the ideas come at a more natural pacing, and the big drops and the ebb and the flow is much more controllable and more like a quantifiable journey, as opposed to, oh, that's an interesting loop project that Jason and Travis have, where it's just like neener, 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 neener. Like I feel much more in command. I know Jason does too, of moving moods around more convincingly.
And there's also a sense with the technology we do have, like Trav has several things going as far as MIDI controllers or touchpad instrument, and I've got controllable touchpad screens too, and I think throughout this whole thing we've been having to learn almost new ways of playing. So like for a big chunk of the show, I'm playing like one hand on the drums while working the touchscreen, and it's really only pretty recently that it feels like now it's all one complete instrument. As far as me really trying to separate my brain, now it all feels like it just all works together. Like if I'm doing something, I know I got to tuck the stick in and go, and it just kind of does it, as the idea comes along, as opposed to having to think of like, how do I do something without messing up this beat or doing something else. So that feels great.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So you're sort of talking about, the different approach that you've taken to music. So how does your approach to music making with EOTO differ from most of the others in the electronic music scene?
Well, with the electronic music scene in general, dudes spend hundreds of hours in a basement building these songs in different programs and drum machine type programs and whatnot, and creating everything and re-listening to it, re-manicuring it, and getting it absolutely the way they want it before they bring it out. And with us, we're just coming out and playing the stuff right there and creating the music on the spot. So it can be a lot more rugged potentially, but it also is infused with that feeling of being made live, because it's all live. We never play the same song twice.
It's being naked out there and jumping off the cliff and just going for it, and feeling that sense that the crowd is with you, or if they know what you're doing, they go there with you, and if they don't know what you're doing, there can't help but be a certain edge to our music that like anything could happen at any moment. So that's probably the funnest part about doing the group, and also what separates us the most from sort of either a group that has a bunch of pre-programmed tracks playing behind them, almost karaoke-ish, or like really taking the risk, with their music and doing something that's not so pre-planned. So for us, it has its pluses and minuses, but when we're on our game, it feels like it galvanizes, a lot of power. So, yeah.
And you mentioned that you never play the same song twice, but when you release your live shows on live downloads or whatever, they still have names. And so where do those names come from?
We have two guys in Denver, Brian and Heath, that we send them the recordings of each show, and they name every single song, like upwards of 4,000 songs now, probably.
Probably so, yeah.
And they try to name every song differently than the last.
Well, and so another thing I wanted to touch on is that both of you recently performed at the Electric Forest Festival in Michigan as both members of the String Cheese Incident and as EOTO. And so what was it like for you guys to be performing at a festival that had so much artist crossover between those sort of two different kinds of genres?
It's awesome. It's exciting because I think a lot of people were reticent to span that gap between, say, Tiesto and Infamous String Dusters and everything in between, and I think it all flew pretty well. I think a lot of the worries that people had about it being all like Tiesto, Guido, trance heads kind of went away, and probably a lot of the Tiesto fans thinking it was going to be a bunch of overall wearing straw in their teeth bluegrass fans went away too, and the whole thing I think went better than ever either camp would have thought.
And there was still, if you were really, if you had a particular taste of music, like you only wanted to see organic stuff, you could do that all weekend long. And if you just wanted to be in an electronic world, you could pretty much do that, from day to night. But the way they had the schedule set up was that you could almost see about 40 minutes of every single act there. There's a couple of weird crossover things, or a few things when the barn stage is going where maybe you might not be able to see it.
So EOTO focuses a lot on sort of dubstep sound, and but a lot of people are saying that dubstep is sort of fading away in the scene right now. Some are calling their music a new genre called post dubstep. So what are your thoughts on the state of the dubstep industry right now?
Oh my God.
I don't think it's dying.
It doesn't feel like it at all. I mean, if you were just even out at Electric Forest, and we have our friends in Minnesota, Twin Cities Dubstep, that whole crew. I mean, the shows are, if anything, you hear back, every show is selling out, and it's unbelievable, to the degree that, if anything, it's becoming more popular. I'd say shows that are, bass oriented in general are really big. But man, the dubstep crowds, the whole crew of Excision and Datsik and Skrillex, it's these little flurries of groups that are, starting to come up underneath, say, Bass Nectar and Pretty Lights, that are now, drawing formidable crowds. So it doesn't feel like it's going away. It might morph, a little bit here and there, but it feels like that style of music is, if anything, stronger than ever.
I think there's cats that occasionally come through and make everything else seem old, like Skrillex just did, in my estimation. Where there's a lot of stuff I listen to now on Beatport or Attic Tech where it's like, oh God, it's so boring. It just all the whole standard dubstep ride, which is now seeming a little stale, because Skrillex has such an incredible musicianship and attention to detail that his songs are just like, oh my God, what the
ADD madness.
I know, but musically really,
all
really
together.
compelling, and I think everyone is now like scrambling because he has just punched a hole in everything. And there's the cats now. This guy Mord Fustang I was talking about, that's very Skrillexy in some ways, but it's like that new level of like, oh God, I really got to pull my shit together, and really the attention to detail and the ebb and the flow and the musicality and the intense drum programming and stuff that makes it keep up with now.
Not so easy to just cut and paste. Like the beginning sounds rad, that first drop was rad, the intro is rad, and I'll just cut and paste that to make the song 3 minutes long or whatever. And now you're really having to dive in deeper as a producer to make it interesting the whole way through. And so for me, listening to quite a few tracks, I'm listening to these phrases that are going by, and when you hear the exact same phrase on the other side of it, I just tune out, So as if, that music wasn't, 3.5 minutes long already. Now I'm reduced to like the first minute and a half before I got to switch to another.
I got about 45 seconds
in me
for most of the stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see that there's so much self-motivation to keep the music interesting. And so I wanted to thank you so much for talking to us. Last question. You guys have really been stepping up your visual game in a big way, and one of your visuals features astronauts blasting off to a robot inhabited planet. If you guys were astronauts, what planet would you go to, and what would you expect to find there?
I want to go to a planet of divinely inspired shapeshifters that can change their forms due to the whims of whatever feels like will propel their spiritual evolution the most. And then they'd convince me that I don't need my suit anymore, and then we'd all hang out.
Right on.
Yeah, I don't have anything so clever. I still enjoy thinking about how much further away everything in the ocean itself has that's so undiscovered. There's probably an entire planet underneath our own planet that we haven't discovered, and just they're still finding new species, and new, who knows if any of them are shapeshifters, but it just seems like there's still a whole other worlds on our own planet that are left to be discovered. So I'd love to have gills and swim around and find those things.
Excellent, excellent. Well, there you have it, divine shapeshifters and underwater exploration with EOTO. So thank you so much again for talking to me, guys, and looking forward to your set tonight and all the great music that is to come. So thanks so much for talking to me.
Nice.
She could go lower than I ever really thought she could. Face down, ass up, yeah. We gonna try this shit again. Rewind! She could go lower than I ever really thought she could. Face down, ass up. The top of your booty feeling out your pants, baby. Pull your pants up. I like it when I see you do it better than ever.